Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. It is always a pleasure to be here with all of you and stream and have a great conversation. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's have yet another late night chat. Good times, good times.
American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be yet another great late night chat. We're going to talk about a number of different things. So for those of you who are familiar with this program, those of you who may not be familiar with this program, the way we do things is I give my opening remarks. And my opening remarks, or whatever I want to talk about tonight, usually has something to do with the news peg, the news item that I'm, about. Tonight, that would be Navalny cracked corn and I don't care, which we will talk about. Then after I do my opening remarks, we then do a roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. We find out who it is who's on the other side of the camera, who's watching. And then from there, after the roll call and after the opening remarks, then from there, we answer people's questions for the rest of the night. So if there's something you would like to be addressed in the second half of So yeah, this is the way we're doing it now, on my phone, because my laptop seems to have overheated. So if you all can see me, I think we are live once again, but we are using my phone because my laptop overheated. I need to get a new one, but we'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Can folks still see me? All live? All good? All right, great. Yeah, well, the laptop here seems to have overheated, but I am now talking to you on my phone, right? I jumped onto my phone. So we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Maybe I can get my laptop to turn back on here in a minute. But until then, as super chats come in, I will write them down. I will write them down the old-fashioned way, because we had. So here we go. I see the first one that's come in. Please speak on the importance of Putin's 2007 Munich speech. So I'm getting my pen and I'm looking for a notebook to write it down in. So hold on. I will go get a notebook for writing super chats down, and we'll do it the old-fashioned way. Okay. All righty. So we have a super chat that came in, and I'm writing it down because I'm on my phone. All right. There we go. And maybe here in a little bit, my laptop will turn back on. So there you go. Phone does have good quality, Bobbis. It really does have good quality. So significance of Putin's 2007 Munich speech. Very good. So that'll be the first one we address in the second half of the program. I don't know if I'll be able to see the different screens tonight. So it may be that I'm only able to answer super chats. So probably the best thing to do if you want me to answer questions is send in a super chat on YouTube. YouTube is probably the best vehicle for getting me to answer your question tonight, because I'm on the phone, because my laptop overheated. I might be back on the laptop here in a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notifications bell. Glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're just doing our show the way we always do, with opening remarks, followed by the roll call, followed then by the answering of your questions. So it's an interesting night, but luckily I was able to log in from my phone and just pick up right where I left off, because I am relentless, because I do not surrender, because I do not give up. Other people surrender. Other people get demoralized. I do not do that. I do not get demoralized. I do not surrender in the face of opposition. I just keep going. That is the way I am. I have a huge amount of grit. I have a huge amount of willingness to endure. And that has always been one of my greatest strengths. There are people that I know that have very, very good skills, but in the face of adversity, they get demoralized. They get bogged down, right? If things don't go their way, they just feel defeated and they give up. If that was the case, I would have died a really, really long time ago. I continue, right? When I want something, and it's something that I'm really dedicated to trying to achieve, I fight for it. And I work very, very hard to achieve it. Will Putin go down in history as a major leader like Lenin or Mao? Writing it down. So, with that in mind, I'm going to start tonight's stream, writing the super chats down as they come in. We'll answer them. The laptop may start working here in a little bit. But yeah, we'll just do it from my phone tonight. If that's the way we got to do it, that's the way we got to do it, because we don't surrender here, because we don't give up, right? At some point, I may need to go get my phone charger, which is on the other side of the room, to plug my phone in, but that's fine. And I thank you all for being here. And I thank you all for being willing to come back on here and keep asking questions and keep engaging. So the topic of tonight's stream is Alexei Navalny, cracked corn, and I don't care. Now, why did I call it that? Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, there's a folk song that is actually really racist. It was popular, right? Oh, Pepe Escobar refers to Straussian neocon psychopaths. Who is Strauss? It's Leo Strauss, but I'll answer that during the questions. Very good. And the song is actually really racist. It was a minstrel show song, meaning it was written by white people, and it was performed at these racist plays they used to do, where they would have white people dress as black people and sing songs. And a lot of very popular American songs, unfortunately, were written for these racist minstrel shows that were quite popular in the 1800s, late 1800s. From the time that slavery was starting to come to an end and afterwards, these minstrel shows were very popular. And there was one song, and there was a very famous composer in the United States named Stephen Foster, and he wrote songs for the minstrel shows. He was quite famous, and he wrote very good songs that had a very kind of sweet sadness, kind of captured the essence of depression. But he wrote them, for these minstrel shows. But he didn't write Jimmy Crack Corn. And that's actually not the name of the song. The song is called The Blue Tail Fly. It's called The Blue Tail Fly, but everybody knows it as Jimmy Crack Corn because the chorus is Jimmy Crack Corn and I don't care. Jimmy Crack Corn and I don't care. Jimmy Crack Corn and I don't care. My master's gone away. Now you know how it's racist. I'm not even going to sing you the rest of the song because it's so damn racist. I did not know that. I just knew the chorus when I was a kid. I didn't even know my master's gone away. So it became kind of a thing I would do when I don't care about something. I would just start saying Jimmy Crack Corn and I don't care. And I'm not the only person who's done that. But that was kind of a running joke that I would do. And so then one day I thought that I would Google the lyrics to Jimmy Crack Corn. And I found out the actual lyrics. And the lyrics of the song tell the story of, there's a slave, an African, black slave who is his job is to, escort his slave master when he's riding his horse. And one day a fly bites the slave master's horse, and the slave master is thrown off of his horse and hits his head and dies. And the song is kind of implying that the slave killed the master, but he's blaming it on a fly. The slave knocked his master off the horse and killed the slave master. That's kind of the implication. So it's particularly not a good song. It's a dark song because it's basically saying that this slave is guilty of murder. One of the versions of the song, the chorus, the chorus ends with, something like, and the jury wondered why, and the verdict was the blue tail fly, meaning that the jury found him not guilty for killing his slave master. It's very dark. It's a very offensive song. It's not a song I would sing on these streams, right? But I'm referencing the song on here because it's a well-known American song, and the chorus, at least people know, right? And the chorus, I'm referencing it because mainstream U.S. media is trying endlessly to convince us to care about the death of Alexei Navalny, and I don't. I don't. And I am seeing fake news. For example, there was a tweet going around. It's got a picture of a young woman. It says, this young woman has been sentenced to 15 days in jail for mourning the death of Alexei Navalny. And that's bullshit. That's not what happened, right? We get this image in our head that, this woman who admired Alexei Navalny, she was walking down the street. Oh, she was so sad that Navalny died. And the Russian secret police went up to her and said, you are not allowed to be sad that Navalny has died. You are going to prison for 15 days. Because we are evil. Well, that's not actually what happened. You look at the details of the case. She was sentenced to 15 days in jail because she assembled a bunch of her friends who were Navalny supporters and tried to get them to go out and riot in the aftermath of Navalny's death. A little bit different now, isn't it? A little bit different than just, for mourning his death. No, she got all of her friends together that were Navalny supporters, rich kids in Russia that hate the government and wish Russia was America, and are convinced that if only Putin was out of office, they could all have a Disneyland playground. It would be just like the sexy images of America that they see on TV, on satellite TV or whatever. And she and her friends, they went to have an illegal demonstration and go out and riot, and they said you can't do that. And so she got 15 days in jail. As Randall is pointing out, does this work? Yes, as Randall is pointing out, people at January 6th got, 25 years, 45 years, this one got 15 days for trying to plan a riot on the death of Navalny. And you have to keep in mind also, Russia is in a little bit of a different circumstance than the United States, right? You might say, well, Caleb, what is somebody called a protest without a permit in New York City? And they got a 15-day jail sentence. Wouldn't that be a little bit harsh? And, sure, it would be in the conditions that America is in right now. But Russia is in a declared war. They're in a full military mobilization on Russian territory. There are missiles and bombs from Ukraine being shot at civilians. There are Russians dying on the border every day fighting the Ukrainian military. Not the same situation at all, right? And in the United States, if you are in a state of war, the Bill of Rights is null and void. So it's a completely different situation, right? Russia is in a state of full war, right? With the Ukrainian military attacking them with drones and shooting missiles at them, with soldiers dying on the border. And this opposition guy died in jail. And so this woman tried to organize a riot. She tried to get all of the Navalny admirers, the social media rich kids in Russia who love Navalny, to go out and break shit and burn shit. And, if that was happening in America, right, if we were in a state of war, she would be designated an enemy combatant. She wouldn't get a trial under American law. Do you remember the Patriot Act? The Patriot Act says that you can be designated an enemy combatant. So in the United States, if we were at war with a country, if we were in a state of war, if there was a military confrontation where Congress had fully declared war, and somebody was planning a riot in order to support the other side, she would have been declared an enemy combatant and been indefinitely detained. So she wouldn't have even had a trial, right? She would have gone before a military tribunal. She would have been declared an enemy combatant. I'm sorry, I've read the National Defense Authorization Act. I've read the Patriot Act. No. People who say, oh, it's so harsh and all that. No. She tried to organize a riot in the aftermath of the death of this guy, and she was sentenced to 15 days in jail. That's very different than she was jailed for mourning the guy. Meanwhile, all kinds of people who admire Navalny are putting flowers on his grave. People are mourning Navalny constantly. Anyone who turns on BBC, anyone who turns on any Western media, you're seeing nothing but mourning for Navalny. The mourning for Navalny won't stop. It's like how many times has the guy died already? I mean, he's just died. It's like he's died all weekend, right? He just dies nonstop. He's been dying nonstop for 5 days, right? How many times can one man die, right? Navalny was a guy who worked for America trying to destabilize Russia. He's not the only person in Russia who disagreed with Putin, right? Putin was the founder of the United Russia Party. He left the United Russia Party and he became politically independent. But there's the Communist Party in Russia. They disagree with Putin. They're the biggest opposition party. There's the Liberal Democratic Party in Russia. They're another opposition party. They disagree with Putin. There were a number of different candidates in Russia's presidential election. I was there. I was embedded with Russia's presidential election in 2018. I was embedded with them. And I can tell you there are plenty of people in Russia who disagree with Putin on some policy. They want him to have more of a welfare state and social democracy. They want, more authoritarian military stuff. They want more market liberalism like the Simchuk woman. There are varying degrees of people in Russia that for whatever reason they want the government of Russia to conduct itself differently, right? There are plenty of people in the country who disagree, to some degree or other with Russia. Now, this is interesting. So my laptop is now working again. So this could be interesting here, right? Now how does this work? Now now you're seeing me from two different angles.
Look at that. Look at that. Wow.
Wow.
I'm in two places at once. Is anyone on
drugs
drugs
while they're watching this?
This is the stream to watch while you're on LSD, right? I am coming at you from two different angles. Oh my God, this is amazing. The wonders of modern technology. You thought one of me was too much to handle. Now there's two of me. Oh my God.
Anyway, folks. Anyway, we'll continue this way. We'll continue this way. How's the audio? Can you hear me? Is the audio good? Audio is good? All right. Okay. So now I turn the phone off, right? Or I don't. Huh. Okay. Right. Turn the phone off because it was giving me an awkward echo. And so there we go. The wonders of StreamYard. That was utterly amazing. If there's ever been a stream to watch while you're on drugs, it's this one. We're not big fans of drug use on this YouTube channel. We really aren't. But if you are a connoisseur of hallucinogens, if there's any stream to watch, it would be the one where I magically appear on the screen from two different angles, right? That is some beautiful shit. And now that the laptop is working again, I can get on the Rumble. So if I missed any Rumble rants, I do apologize. I'll scroll up and I'll find the Rumble rants. This is a wild night. I have never had a stream. Yeah, here's a rant for ratings' sake, right? Says Jonathan Blazer. All right. Rumble, Jonathan. Thank you. I didn't see it on the phone. But now that we're back on the overheated laptop, we're doing amazing things here. This is good shit, as they say. This is great. This is really, really, really tremendous stuff. So, yeah, wild stream tonight. Wow. Anyhow, Jonathan says I sound a bit weird. I sound weird. Jonathan, you think I sound weird? You are wearing a ski mask. You're wearing a ski mask. You look weird, my friend. Look at that. You're wearing a ski mask. You got your goatee. You're pointing at the snow. I mean, you look weird. I might sound weird, but you look weird, Jonathan. I'm just kidding. I know Jonathan. Jonathan's a good guy. He doesn't always wear his ski mask. Not always, right? I mean, sometimes he wears a baseball cap. Other times, he wears a bowler hat. He sometimes I've even seen Jonathan with no hat, actually. He's a no hat guy. So, Jonathan is not weird, and I don't sound weird either because that echo is gone. We love you, Jonathan. Good to have you here tonight. This has been a technological adventure, right? Started the stream on the laptop. The laptop went under. It then transferred to the cell phone. And then I turned the laptop back on. This is amazing, right? Navalny's ghost is haunting us right now. Navalny is very angry that I am making a lighthearted stream about his death. And he's haunting my electronics tonight and making this stream one of the weirdest streams I've ever had. But that's okay. That's fine. This is going to be a wild, wild evening, but I'm having fun. I am having fun, and I'm gonna be able to answer people's super chat questions, and that's going to be awesome. So there's a lot of great things happening here tonight. There's a lot of great things happening here tonight. So wow, folks, it's freezing cold here in New York City. Let me just put this out there, okay? I mean, if you're in Russia, which some of you watching might be, you're gonna think me complaining about cold is stupid, just bullshit, right? So I do apologize. If you live in Russia, if you live in Iceland, if you live in Canada, some very, very cold place, I have absolutely no right to complain. Uh, you know, absolutely no right to complain. But what I don't like is that uh, that right now in New York City, where it generally doesn't get as cold as it does in other parts of the country, you're in New York City. Um, it's cold outside, but there's no snow on the ground. It's bright and it's not cold enough you have to wear a winter coat. It's cold enough you can wear a regular coat, but it's still cold. And so every time I go outside, I'm just like, "Urgh." I'm just like enduring the cold. It's been about 27 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. I know people in Michigan are saying, "Oh, give me a break, Caleb. Give me a break." Well, you're right. You're right. That's one of the things I do like about New York City. Even though it snows here, even though it gets wintry here, we don't get the cold we get in the Midwest, right? We're close to the ocean and everything's decent. Whenever you go outside, you know, you're like clenching to get through the cold because you're not wearing a full winter coat, right? If it was cold enough on the ground, you'd put off the winter coat. But instead, we're putting on a light coat and we're freezing. So I'm walking down the road, clenching, you know, and so it's a little bit frustrating, but it'll be better pretty soon. Pretty soon, I'm headed to Russia for the youth festival, so that'll be pretty awesome. So that was a tangent about the weather and the technology. We're talking about Navalny cracking corn and not caring. That's what we're talking about. Right? I told you all the song that that's based on. Right? The song, "Tail Fly," old racist song from the South, right? And I'm just telling you, I don't care about Navalny. I really don't, because as I told you last night, and I will repeat this over and over, right? Russia is a country that the United States imperialists can't stand. 1917, Russia had a Bolshevik revolution, and the USA, along with 15 different countries, invaded. No one ever talks about that. But if you go to Washington, D.C., there's a monument called the U.S. Marine Corps Monument. And on the back of the monument, it lists every place, every country that the U.S. Marine Corps have been deployed to, right? You all know the U.S. Marine Corps hymn. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. What is that about? Well, that's about the fact that Thomas Jefferson sent the U.S. Marines to Libya in like 17 something to fight the Barbary pirates. Um, you know, and you know, in the 1700s, the U.S. Marines were sent to Libya. Well, one of the places that's listed on the back of the U.S. Marine Corps monument is Soviet Russia, not the Soviet Union. Because there was no Soviet Union yet. The Soviet Union wasn't created until 1921. But Soviet Russia, right after the Bolshevik Revolution, they called it Soviet Russia. And um, Soviet Russia uh, was created, and the USA was one of 15 different countries, I think more than 15 countries that invaded Soviet Russia. Uh, USA didn't recognize the Soviet Union until I think 1935. I don't know why the mic is acting weird, folks. I don't know what's going on. I got my Blue Yeti right here. I don't know what. It's on internal microphone. So let's get the Blue Yeti back on. How's that? We're doing better on mic. Any better? Any better? The microphone improved. But anyway, the USA didn't recognize the Soviet Union until 1945. There was a temporary alliance with the Soviet Union. And to defeat the Nazis. After that, the USA launched a policy of containment, all kinds of sanctions, all kinds of attempted subversion. Uh, Ultimately, the USA was able to destabilize and bring down the Soviet Union by manipulating factions in the Communist Party against each other. And you know, was pretty awful. In the 1990s, the United States was looting Russia economically, just devastating the place, right? I actually went to an event they had at NYU a few years ago where the speaker was Bill Hadley, the Democratic congressman who worked with the Clinton administration, was going over to Russia in the 1990s. And he said it was very much a winner take all operation. They would sit there and say, how much shit can we stuff down Boris Yeltsin's throat? They were just going over there and economically looting the country during the 1990s. 1993, Russia had an election and they elected a Duma, a parliament that was opposed to the economic devastation that Russia was facing at the hands of the IMF and the World Bank. Um, they elected this Duma. They elected a coalition government, the Communist Party, some Russian nationalist groups, others. It was called the National Salvation Front, the coalition of parties that wanted to stop the economic devastation of Russia. And so Boris Yeltsin dissolved the parliament. And when the parliamentarians refused to leave, he sent the military to crush the parliament. The constitutional crisis of 1993, Black September, awful. 1996, Boris Yeltsin was very unpopular. And so the Communist Party of the Russian Federation ran Gennady Zyuganov against Boris Yeltsin. And the US government did everything it could to make sure that Boris Yeltsin won the 1996 election, that he got reelected. They made a documentary about it. The cover of Time magazine brags about it, right? I'll show you the cover of Time magazine. That's why all this election meddling stuff is just bullshit, right? This talk of election meddling. The USA meddled in Russia's elections like crazy. This is the actual cover of Time magazine from 1996. I am going to put this on the screen. Let's see if StreamYard allows me to put it on the screen. The USA wants to lecture the world about Russia allegedly meddling in American elections because of some bots or some trolls or something like that. I'm going to show you the actual cover of Time magazine from July of 1996, right? This is the actual, here it is. This is the actual cover of Time magazine. Are you ready for this? Right? The USA is saying, oh my God, Russia possibly bought some trolls and some bots, and that helped Trump get elected. This is what the cover of Time magazine in July of 1996 was. Yanks to the rescue. The secret story of how American advisors helped Yeltsin win. Look at that. Look at that. I mean, and they have the gall to talk to us about Russian influence, Russian meddling. Oh my God. I mean, how on earth do they have the gall to talk about Russian meddling in American elections when the cover of Time magazine is celebrating American meddling in Russian elections? This is absolutely ridiculous. Boris Yeltsin was an awful president. And at the same time that they're pushing Boris Yeltsin to economically devastate the country, during this time period, Russia's population decreased by 10%, right? 10% during these years. The population went down by 10%. People either left the country or died. Huge rise in suicide, huge rise in drug trafficking, huge rise in human trafficking, huge rise in all kinds of awful things, mass unemployment, not good years, with US neoliberal free market policies being forced on Russia. Bad time in Russia's history, brought to you by the United States. At the same time that's going on, the USA is backing Chechen separatists, people from Chechnya, armed Muslim extremists trying to drive and break apart Russia and create it and Chechnya as a separate country, break it from the Russian Federation. And so there's armed separatist groups tied in with Saudi Arabia, tied in with the United States, trying to break apart Russia. All of this is going on. Well, Putin gets reelected, or Putin gets elected president. And he's a guy, former member of the security services, former KGB, and he's going to fix the country. And he wrote his academic thesis about how to fix the country. His academic thesis said he would fix the country with nationalization of oil and gas. He would use the oil and gas industry as national champions. And so Putin restructured Russia's economy around oil and gas, and he reindustrialized Russia. He funded their industrial sector, he funded their farming sector, and he rebooted the Russian economy. He stabilized Russia's economy by having the government reassert control over the means of production to some degree. There's a very big market sector. It's not the Soviet Union anymore. There's a lot of wealthy oligarchs that the state kind of facilitates a lot of private corporations. It's not the Soviet Union anymore, right? And Putin is not a Marxist or a communist in any conceivable way. He mourns the loss of the Soviet Union. One of the phrases that Putin frequently says is he says, anyone who does not mourn the loss of the Soviet Union has no heart. And anyone who thinks the Soviet Union is going to return has no brain. That is something he said, and I think he's right about that. As much as I admire the Soviet Union, as much as I draw inspiration from Marxism, Leninism, that revolutionary tradition, the Soviet Union's not going to come back, right? The Soviet Union needed to adjust in the 1980s. There was no way they could continue doing things that way. They needed to adjust, and they weren't able to adjust. And by trying to adjust, they fell apart, right? They created an opening. China was able to adjust its socialist system very effectively, to adjust the socialist system in a way that it could expand. Um, you know, and there you go. But the Soviet Union couldn't adjust, so it fell. And Putin rebuilt the Soviet economy. This Navalny clown is somebody who went to the United States, the country that wrecked Russia in the 1990s, the country that destroyed the Soviet Union, the country that meddled in their elections to put Boris Yeltsin back in office. Do you want me to put it on the screen once again? Right? You know, the country that did this to Russia and economically devastated them by making sure Boris Yeltsin got in there to economically loot the country and devastate it. Alexei Navalny went to them and got their backing, became their darling and their champion, and engaged in protests designed to destabilize Russia. That's what he did. So, do I sympathize with him? No. Do I admire him? No. Do I mourn his death? No. No, I do not, right? Now when anyone dies, anybody, no matter how reprehensible, right, you do offer condolences to the family because they didn't do anything, right? I don't think Navalny's wife and kids. Did he have kids? Did he have a wife? I don't even know. I don't care. But you always do offer condolences to the family. So I offer condolences to the family, and I don't celebrate his death. You should never celebrate anyone's death. That is not an ethical or moral thing to do. I remember when I was a member of I was starting to leave the Workers' World. I was pretty much out of the Workers' World Party, but they started celebrating the death of John McCain, and I thought that's not ethical, right? Jesus Christ said, "Let the dead bury their own dead. Our duty is to build the kingdom of God," and that is my approach. One should never celebrate the death of another person, not Osama bin Laden, not anybody. So I do not celebrate this man's death. I do not think this man's death is a reason for celebration. But am I crying any tears for this man? No, I am not. No, I am not. I am not crying any tears for this man. I'm not, because he stood with the Western imperialists against his own people. Oh, and let me add that this man also had no problem working with neo Nazis, was good friends, and had rallies with neo Nazis. He referred to certain ethnic minorities in Russia, specifically Muslim minorities, as cockroaches. Uh, he wasn't a good guy, right? And he was involved with the United States to try and destabilize Russia and to destabilize Russia on behalf of the United States, right? So I don't care. I just, and the fact that U.S. media is singing a sob story for Alexei Navalny, like, oh my God, it's so awful. That makes me hate it even more, right? When Gaddafi, the savior, the guy who created modern Libya, who raised Libya up from poverty, who industrialized, made Libya the most prosperous country on the African continent, when he was brutally murdered by the people who eventually became ISIS, mainstream media celebrated it, and Hillary Clinton said, "We came, we saw, he died." And she laughed about it. Sick, right? There's just so many examples of U.S. mainstream media celebrating the death of good people, and so now this one guy in Russia who worked for the United States to destabilize his homeland, um, he died. He died in prison. How did he die? I don't know. I don't really care. I really don't care. At this point, I am going to show you, you know, let's talk about, US media is singing all kinds of songs for Navalny. They are crying for Navalny. Navalny, oh my God, Navalny is dead. I'm going to show you some people that US media has never cried for, that US media has never even bothered to tell you about. I'm going to show you the Alley of Angels. Why is it so small? Right? That is the Alley of Angels. That's not the best picture of it I can use. Hold on. Right? What's going on here? The Alley of Angels. There we go. We'll make the image bigger. The Alley of Angels. This is a monument to all the children in Donbass who have died at the hands of the US-backed Kiev government. And US media doesn't give a flying fuck about these children. It pretends they don't exist. They make it sound, they always say Ukraine was a peaceful country until Putin invaded. No, it wasn't, because these children were being bombed and killed, lying fuckheads. Ukraine was not a peaceful country until Putin, quote unquote, invaded. Ukraine was a country in which children were being murdered by Nazis. And they never, these children don't exist, according to American media. These children don't exist, and they don't even get to have a Wikipedia page. There's a Wikipedia page to this monument, and they took it down because, Wikipedia doesn't want you to know about this. For 8 years, the Kiev government was bombing and murdering these people. They signed a peace treaty called the Minsk Agreement that said they were supposed to start recognizing their rights, supposed to bring them back to the country, and then they didn't carry it out. And for 8 years straight, the Ukrainian government was bombing and murdering the people in Donetsk, the people of Lugansk. It was bombing and murdering them. It was bombing and murdering them. Bombing and murdering them for 8 years. And no one cares about that. So we're supposed to care about Navalny, right? 16,000 people have died as the US-backed regime is droning and bombing and food blockading Donbass, Donetsk, and Lugansk. The Donetsk People's Republic, the Lugansk People's Republic. They're bombing and killing them for 8 years. All these people are dying, and mainstream media, just didn't notice, just forgot to care about them. But then one guy who doesn't like Putin dies. And they have been talking about it they have not stopped talking about it for days straight. These children didn't get one mention on CNN. These children did not get 1 minute on Fox. These children did not get 1 minute on NBC. These children, They don't matter, according to American TV. But one man who didn't like Putin, who aligned with, the American government against his own people and his own nationality, one guy has been the talk of American mainstream media for days. Now, if you can't see how much bullshit this is, I don't know what to tell you, right? All those children that died didn't get a single mention on television. They make it sound like they didn't exist. They said Ukraine was a peaceful country, but this guy dies. And one man dies, and they talk about it nonstop for days. They won't stop talking about it. This is one man. This man has dominated the American mainstream media news cycle for days on end. Right? How many times does one man die? I feel like he died 5 times in the last 3 days. He died 5 times. I mean, this guy it's like he's dying every hour on CNN. Every hour this guy dies, right? He just dies, and then he 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 dies, and then Kamala Harris talks about him dying, and then Joe Biden talks about him dying, and then Trump talks about him dying, and then he dies again, and he dies again and again, and he just won't stop dying. How long is this one man gonna die? He can't stop dying. It's like this guy's death is on loop. Right? You remember the old CD player? You push repeat 1 and play the track over and over and over again. This guy has been dying nonstop for 3 fucking days. I'm tired of it. And the reason I'm tired of it is because these children who actually died and have been dying for 8 years didn't get a single mention. Their lives don't matter. Their lives don't matter, according to mainstream media. For 8 years, the government in Kiev was bombing Donetsk and Lugansk, killing people, food blockade. They signed a peace treaty to make sure they stopped, and and then they didn't. I mean, it's just so And the other thing that's worth mentioning about this, right? Yes, in 1982, before I was born, I was very aggressive. This guy, Navalny, and I've said this before, but it's just it irks me to no end. So this guy, Navalny, hung out with neo-Nazis all the fucking time. Right? There's videos of him speaking at rallies with people doing the Hitler salute, people marching with swastikas. Well, that's fine. And all these liberals have no problem calling him a hero. There's video of him referring to ethnic minorities in Russia as cockroaches that need to be stamped out, need to be exterminated. Oh, they're fine. Meanwhile, anybody who disagrees with the mainstream liberal left on anything gets called a Nazi, right? I talked to Alexander Dugin, a Russian intellectual who's not a Nazi. And that is the basis upon which people claim that I am a Nazi. That does not logically make any sense, because if Dugin is not a Nazi, how am I a Nazi for speaking to him? Dugin rejects Nazism and fascism, and he has his own ideology called the fourth political theory and Eurasianism. So Dugin's not a Nazi, but apparently all over Twitter, it is common knowledge that because I met with a guy who is himself not a Nazi, somehow that makes me a Nazi, right? And this is like, there's all these videos pumped up all over YouTube explaining that because I met with somebody who, if you actually read their work, isn't a Nazi, that makes me a Nazi, right? I have been told that every Trump supporter is a Nazi. Right? I have been told that we shouldn't try to talk to and engage with Trump supporters because that would be like trying to engage with Nazis. I have been told that everyone is a Nazi in America nowadays, right? If you disagree with Israel, you're a Nazi. You support the Palestinians, you're a Nazi, right? You don't want to send weapons to Ukraine to support the Nazi battalion, you're a Nazi. Everyone's a Nazi in America these days, right? All over Twitter, all over Facebook, everyone in the world is a Nazi. You're a Nazi, I'm a Nazi. Half the fucking country are Nazis. Every Trump supporter is a Nazi. everyone who doesn't think, doesn't accept the transgender position on bathrooms and women's sports is a Nazi. Everyone who ever disagrees with mainstream media on anything is a Nazi. But for some reason, this guy has been awarded a get out of being a Nazi free pass, right? The woke Silicon Valley industry awarded this fucking asshole a get out of being a Nazi free card. This guy goes and speaks with Nazis. This guy calls for ethnic minorities to be exterminated like cockroaches. But he just can't be called a Nazi, right? I mean, he looks like a fucking Nazi. He's got a fucking Nazi haircut, for Christ's sakes, right? If I was to draw a cartoon of what a Nazi would look like, it would look like that, right? I mean, this is like, this guy could play a Nazi in a fucking movie. And there's video of him marching around with fucking Nazis. He looks like a guy who they cast to play a Nazi air pilot in a World War II movie, but he's not a Nazi, right? I mean, this is insanity, right? I mean, he doesn't he, right? This is like, you make a World War II movie, right? And they're lining up different actors. Wouldn't you hire this guy to play a fucking Nazi in your movie, right? Doesn't he look like some ruthless Nazi, air pilot or something like that? I mean, this guy, or a James Bond villain or something. This guy even looks like a fucking Nazi. He hangs out with Nazis. He calls for ethnic groups to be exterminated. But the woke left has given him a get out of being called a Nazi free card, right? For some reason, he's just the one person that doesn't get called a Nazi, right? And if that doesn't make you realize how full of bullshit all of these woke people are, right? I mean, if everyone's a Nazi except for the Nazi, what do you say? The New York Times even admitted he was a Nazi, right? It's not according to, that's Russian propaganda, Caleb. Well, it's quotes from the New York Times, my friends. Oy, 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 oy. But anyway, folks, I have said my piece about Navalny. I really have no love for Navalny. I don't celebrate anyone's death, right? But I don't give two shits about it. I really don't, right? I think that, we've got one less Navalny in the world. And, sucks for his family, sucks for his relatives. But, the outrage from American media and the way there's just this endless, oh my God, this poor guy. It is. While they don't care about the children of Donbass, straight out of central casting, exactly. They don't care about the children of Donbass. They don't care about Gaddafi. They don't care about. There's just so many people around the world who get killed all the time, and they don't care about it. Right? And yeah, I've spoken my piece on it, everybody. I think I've made my point. This stream tonight has been pretty wild. This has been a pretty wild stream tonight, right? If you think this stream was boring, roll it back to when there were two Calebs on the screen. That was wild. This has been a wild stream, folks. So I'm going to start answering people's super chats pretty soon. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Oh, Jonathan Blazer sent in yet another Rumble rant. That's good. But yeah, let's do the roll call, names and locations, and then I'll start answering people's questions, and then we'll call it a night. It's been fun. Yeah, well, let's do another roll call. So we'll do a roll call. Names and locations, everybody. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? The first name that I see with my little eye is John Whitty from Houston. I spy with my little eye, like Randall Wilson from Lexington, Kentucky. So Juan. Welcome, Juan. Nate from Chicago. Zach Brunch from Richmond, Virginia. Glasgow, Scotland. JT24 in Mississippi. Hampton, Virginia. Patch in Arizona. Jane in New Orleans. California. China Seasoned Noob. Scott London, Clinton Frazier, Springfield, Massachusetts, Ishmael in Los Angeles, Thomas Wolfe in Oklahoma, Copenhagen, Denmark, Heidi from Amsterdam, Sydney, Australia, High Level, Alberta, Canada, Detroit, Michigan, Mosin from Iran, Gabby in Chicago, Jenny in Cincinnati, Alex in Brazil, Sherman Meow in Connecticut, right? Bob Troy in New York. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nick in Michigan. Nick Smokes. Nick Smokes. All right. Johnny Blaze live from the Gulag. I actually have a special video answering that question that I made a little while back. But I can, since you super chatted so much money, I will give you my answer once again. But I actually have a special video on the Caleb Moppin Videos channel where I've addressed that point. But I've addressed that many times on these streams. But since you paid $49.95 for a super chat, I guess I'll give you a what do you call that? A repeat performance, as they say, because you're that interested in what I have to say. But I have a video called "What is LaRoucheism and Where Do I Disagree?" So let me find that. I'll drop that link. An immediate answer there. Whoever sent that super chat. I do have respect for them. But yeah, this is video on LaRouche. So I mean, if you need a quick answer, I have a video on that. But this is a quick answer to your question. Yeah, I'll answer that and when I answer all the other questions, as we do these streams normally for GGF. So there you go. But yeah, this is the answer that's already out there. But I'll give you, because you tipped $49.99, I'll give you a full answer to the question. So there we go. Anyone else? Names and locations. Hey, from Springfield, Lee Stranahan, awesome, good friend of mine, great radio host, great anti-war activist, and critic of the low-wage police state. Much love to you, brother Lee. You are loved. Shout out to you and all those you hold dear. Patrick in Maine, Ghost Riders in the sky. All right. Okay. Okay. Oh, wow. Everyone's a Nazi. And then the real ones can hide in plain sight. Well, there you go. There you go. Nicholas in Miami. Everyone who's watching right now, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit the notifications bell so you're notified the next time. Carl in Washington. Welcome, Carl. All righty. All righty. All right. So now, right now I'm having allergies. It's cold outside. It's been one of those like wild days. And so between the technology not working on these streams and everything with the two me's on the screen, I'm having fun, right? Sometimes you just have to act wild. Sometimes you get in that wild mood when things are just like frustrating you. And that's the kind of the mood I'm in right now. I'm kind of frustrated with a few different things in my life right now. I shouldn't be, but whatever. Monopoly has a jail card. Now we have a Nazi card. Yes, that's what I was getting at. But anyway, so now I'm going to start answering people's super chat questions. I do Rumble rants first. And so we'll start with Johnny Blaze. Johnny Blaze says, if you listen to Putin's interviews, including with Tucker, he goes out of his way not to criticize capitalism of bankers and monopolies because there are the interests in Russia he represents. Well, Jonathan, I don't think you're being fair to Putin there, okay? And I'll tell you why. Russia has the reputation of being a communist country, right? Everyone, some people think the hammer and sickle is a Russian symbol. They don't even know it's like a symbol of communism. They think it's just a Russian symbol, okay? And one thing that Russia needs is foreign investment. They need oil and gas. They have oil and gas. They need to sell it to somebody, right? So Russia goes out of its way to be like, we're not communist, right? And Chris, welcome. They go out of their way to say, look, we want people in Russia to make money. We want foreign investment. In the Soviet times, they had a completely state-run economy, and that was a problem, and they needed to get away from it. And in the process of trying to adjust, it led to the Soviet Union. So Putin, when he doesn't attack capitalism in speeches. That's what he's getting at, right? If he were to attack capitalism, just straight up condemn capitalism, right? They would jump on that and they'd say, see, Russia wants a state-run economy again. And they would use that to make propaganda to convince foreign investment to come into the country. And that they have a lot to prove, right? But there is a heavy amount of state involvement in the Russian economy, right? I mean, private companies, most of them are getting a subsidy. There are government planners that plan out. I have actually met with Russian economics professors. A couple years ago, I was in Russia with a friend, and we sat down with like a prominent economist in Russia and talked about Russia's economy. There's actually two very good books on Russia's economy. You can read. One of them um, is called "The Anatomy of Russian Capitalism" by Stanislav Menshikov. Right? This book very much explains the economy of Russia, how it's not the Soviet economy, but there's a huge amount of state oversight in order to ensure economic growth. This book by Sergei Glaziev goes into great detail about neoliberalism and the economic looting of Russia. Shout out to my friend John who gave me these two books on behalf of some friends. He gave me those two books, but those two books are very good in explaining Russia's economy. So food prices, very good. So I and I don't think that's Jonathan. I feel like I have heard Putin criticize capitalism to some degree. He doesn't use the word capitalism, but he talks about the greed of Western corporations, the desire to have a monopoly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan. You may follow this a little bit more than I do, or be more familiar with how these things have developed over time. But there you go. Jamie Turner on Rumble, he says, your research on Kamala is fascinating. I know I've asked you before, but can you say anything about Kamala in Quebec? I can't because I can't verify it. There have been a couple people who have come to me and said that Kamala had a very traumatic experience when she was living in Quebec, but I cannot verify that. And I'm not going to repeat it because, I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I try not to say things. Let me repeat this. As a journalist, you should never proclaim something to be true if you don't know it to be true, right? It is unethical for a journalist to come forward and say untrue things, right? I can't confirm that this is true, and it's kind of, I didn't even want to talk about Willie Brown. Okay, I knew about Willie Brown when I wrote my first book on Kamala Harris, and I'm writing a follow up now. There's going to be a follow up with this. When I wrote this book, many people said to me, well, you really got to include that she slept her way to the top, Caleb, that she fucked Willie Brown to get to the top. And I chose not to go there in this book. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but you don't say that about a woman, right? It's not a polite thing to say about a woman. It's a very sexist thing to say, right? If you say she slept her way to the top, no, you don't say that. The issue is that Willie Brown, right, with whom she had this relationship, she was known to the media to be his mistress. Willie Brown was not a good dude, right? Willie Brown, eventually became mayor of San Francisco, and he was heavily involved with organized crime. He was a pimp lawyer, right? He was the lawyer for the prostitution industry of San Francisco. Okay. And so, with that being the case, right, with the fact that, that she was sleeping with a man who was like the pimp lawyer, right? The fact that, that involved her in a very corrupt political machine, the political machine that came to power after the assassination of George Moscone, which I've talked about on here. When I was in San Francisco, right, I went to San Francisco for Xi Jinping, for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. And I mean, the homelessness, the amount of poop and feces that I saw on the street, I mean, shocking. But one of the buildings where they had the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit was the George Moscone, what is it? George Moscone Conference Center or Pavilion. George Moscone, George Moscone, I mean, that guy was assassinated. He was the mayor of San Francisco. And he didn't call himself a socialist, but he was like a Bernie Sanders figure, He got elected on a platform of supporting labor unions and supporting gay rights, which back then was a pretty touchy subject. And George Moscone, he was mayor of San Francisco. He was very friendly with the Communist Party USA. A lot of people that were in the Communist Party liked him. A lot of labor union people that were friendly to the Communist Party liked him. He was anti-war, and he was George Moscone. People say he was one of the last like liberal mayors of a major city in America. Right? He was a very very liberal mayor. Excuse me, and he was a very very liberal mayor, and he was very closely aligned with Harvey Milk. And Harvey Milk was the first openly gay elected official who was also very left wing. He was aligned with labor unions. He was aligned with the LGBT rights movement. And both George Moscone and Harvey Milk were very friendly with Reverend Jim Jones. Very mysterious. Reverend Jim Jones was not a good dude, right? The what is it called? The People's Temple, right? But it was this very weird Pentecostal church in San Francisco that claimed to be both communist and Pentecostal. And Harvey Milk was elected city alderman with the support of Reverend Jim Jones, and in addition to that, George Moscone was elected mayor with the help of Reverend Jim Jones. They appointed Reverend Jim Jones the head of the housing department of the city of San Francisco, and so he turned the housing department meetings into like crazy prayer rallies, a boring bureaucratic meeting. He turned them into places to give communist evangelical speeches or whatever. And then stuff that was very true about Reverend Jim Jones and how he was, what he was doing to people in his church and just stuff that was just awful. I mean, people talk about some of the more sexual stuff, but beyond that, he would make, if you were becoming a high ranking member of his church, he would make you write a letter in your own hand confessing to molesting your own children. So that if you ever betrayed the church, they could give that to child services and your children would take it. That's reprehensible, right? That's reprehensible. There was a lot of just kooky evil behavior that Reverend Jim Jones was doing. And so, Reverend Jim Jones' kooky evil behavior became public. So Reverend Jim Jones got all of his followers and he packed up and he flew them to Guyana. And at that point, Guyana was a Soviet-aligned military government. Right? It was a military government that was aligned with the Soviets. So Reverend Jim Jones moved to Guyana, and then a member of Congress went down to visit. There was a shootout, and they all committed mass suicide. 900 people committed suicide. They drank cyanide. That's where the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid" comes from. Mass suicide, awful. So immediately after that, like 2 weeks after that, a former police officer, Dan White, went into City Hall in San Francisco. Kaboom, kaboom, killed George Moscone. Kaboom, kaboom, killed Harvey Milk. And so the mayor and a member of city council were murdered in City Hall. Now, not the first time it's happened, obviously. Politicians get assassinated, but Dianne Feinstein, she became the mayor of San Francisco in the aftermath of that. Because, she was the deputy mayor already, so she became the mayor of San Francisco, got sworn in as the mayor of San Francisco. The gay community went out and rioted because they liked George Moscone, they liked Harvey. And Dan White, the former police officer who murdered the mayor of a major city, he only got 2 years in jail. He got a 2-year sentence. Now, can you imagine this? He kills the mayor of a major city, and they get a 2-year sentence, and they're a former police officer. Something's not right. Something's not right. And after Dan White got out of jail, he was suicided, or he committed suicide. Very mysterious. His defense at his trial was the infamous Twinkie defense. He said that the junk food made him do it. That he ate so much junk food it affected his mental health. And he killed the mayor of San Francisco. That whole story is very, very weird. That was a coup, right? It looks to me like in the aftermath of Reverend Jim Jones and all the evil things in Guyana and the mass suicide, the police department of San Francisco. Again, I don't know this to be true. I'm not saying this necessarily happened, right? Because I don't say things that I don't know 100% to be true. it looks to me like there was some forces in government that said no, no, no. This guy, and no, 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 wrong, wrong. George Moscone, Harvey Milk, not happening. Looked like a coup to me. That looked like a coup. There was a coup in San Francisco in 1978 that brought Dianne Feinstein to power. And Dianne Feinstein, she represented, like, they purged the pro-communist Democrats of San Francisco local government, right? Moscone was out, right? Harvey Milk was out, and they brought in Dianne Feinstein, and Dianne Feinstein brought in the Pelosi's, Nancy Pelosi, brought in Willie Brown, and it looks, the Pelosi, many people look at Nancy Pelosi and her family and organized crime, Italian mafia, and many people, I mean, Willie Brown was a pimp lawyer, and the organized crime wing of the Democratic Party machine took over. And that's what happened, right? The communist wing in San Francisco was purged. I wouldn't call them the communist wing. I'd call them the communist friendly wing in San Francisco, because you have to remember San Francisco in the 1970s, right? In Detroit in the 1970s, you did have a communist judge, Judge Justin Ravitz, right? Google Justin Ravitz, Justin C. Ravitz. He was a communist judge who was elected to the reporter for 10 years, right? Judge Justin Ravitz. He was elected. And in San Francisco, Justin C. Ravitz, right? He was an openly communist judge in Detroit because the new communist movement, the Maoist communists, were quite strong in Detroit. You had the League of Revolutionary Black Workers and the Detroit Labor League, and you can read all about it. New York Times, right? First radical judge in the U.S., right? And in San Francisco, you had this magazine that was very popular. It was called Ramparts magazine. And it's obviously not around anymore, but it was a magazine that promoted the Black Panthers, and it promoted, it leaked CIA information. One thing that they routinely did is they are the ones that revealed Project Mockingbird. They're the ones you read about Ramparts magazine. They revealed Project Mockingbird. They're the ones that revealed MK Ultra to some degree or other. This was a very radical, magazine. Is communist word I would use to describe. It promoted the Black Panthers. Eldridge Cleaver became a celebrity because of Ramparts magazine. And the FBI believed that Ramparts magazine was funded by either the Soviet Union or China. They could never prove either. But it looked like Ramparts magazine was getting supported, somewhere from some foreign country. Bob Avakian, the founder of the Revolutionary Communist Party, that was his first job, as he worked for Ramparts magazine. And he wrote articles for Ramparts magazine promoting Chinese communism. David Horowitz, who became like a right-wing conservative, he worked for Ramparts magazine. Ramparts magazine was this radical, pro-communist magazine that was published in the Bay Area. And it was very widely read. And that in the Bay Area in the 70s, there was a very big pro-Chinese communist influence, right? It was there. And the way the CIA dealt with it, according to what's been revealed now about COINTELPRO, is that in San Francisco, and I've known older communists who lived in San Francisco during these years, it was utter chaos. It was communists on communist violence. Communists were killing other communists in San Francisco during these years. Well, not killing, but beating the hell out of the communists, right? The Spartacist League, which was a Trotskyite group, would get into fistfights with people. The National Caucus of Labor Committees, the LaRouche movement would get into fights with people. There were a lot of fist fights going on. And because, Mao communism was so strong in the Bay Area during the 1970s there was just a lot of communists fighting other communists and utter chaos, right? That's when they talk about gangs and counter gangs and low intensity warfare. And there was a strong layer of people that were for the gay rights movement because San Francisco was known to be a very gay city. There was a strong layer of people that supported labor unions. And so you had George Moscone getting elected, you had Harvey Milk getting elected, and you had Ramparts magazine everywhere being studied, and you had Reverend Jim Jones, who was this weird pastor who said he was a communist Pentecostal or whatever. And so there was a lot of weird, what do you call it? I don't know what the right word is. There was a lot of efforts to create confusion and chaos. You know, and that coup didn't happen in '78, where Mayor George Moscone was killed, where Harvey Milk was killed. That is what laid the basis for the corrupt regime that brought us first Dianne Feinstein, then Nancy Pelosi, and then Willie Brown, and now Kamala Harris. Right? The San Francisco Democratic Party is, as it is today, as a result of that coup that happened. You have to remember, for a long time, California was Republican before that. Nixon is from California, right? And there were a lot of California Republicans. California didn't become left wing until the 60s, right? That there were a lot of wealthy landowners, people who owned vineyards and stuff. Right? Ronald Reagan, exactly. He was the governor of California for many years. California was conservative until the rise of the hippie counterculture, right? It was kind of a conservative state because you had a lot of really wealthy people that owned big vineyards and plantations, etc. So, you talk about this. This all started with someone asking about my research on Kamala Harris. It's Jamie Teller asking about my research on Kamala Harris, and he says Biden is an old man with a poor memory. Talk show host rage, Kamala rage. Kamala talked about being ready to step in. All of these are recent headlines. They are pushing her in. Yes, and that's what it looks like to me. All right, okay. So now I'm going to start answering the other super chats. This is a wild stream. This is wild. You guys are awesome. Let me just say that. I have been doing these streams for a long time. Is there anyone watching right now who remembers I used to do these streams once a week because I worked in an office and I would do these streams on Saturday, right? Sometimes I couldn't even do it on Saturday. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment during those days, and my wife and I would argue over who got to use the living room. And it started out just once a week I would do these streams. And then the pandemic happened. And I started doing them every day. And then I was back at my office, but I started streaming from my office. There is a group of people who love what we do, right? We blew up, I think, after I debated Destiny, after I debated Vosh, this channel kind of blew up, right? And there have been people who've come and go. But there's a solid crew of people here who just love what we do here, right? And I shout out to you guys. You know who you are, right? I embrace you, warm embrace to you guys. You guys are the cream of the crop because there's a saying, right? Or there's a feeling among certain people that that people that have bookshelves like this and people that are so interested in this stuff and know this history and take this serious shouldn't be allowed to have a platform, shouldn't be allowed to, get attention to themselves because they're not normal, right? There's this rule that says you have to be a Norman if you want to get attention. You have to be a normie if you want to build an organization. You have to be a norm, Well, I don't pretend to be normal, right? I'm not a freak, right? I have, I've got 5 fingers, I've got 2 feet, I've got 2 arms. I hold gainful employment and support my wife. I live in a lovely apartment in New York City. I don't think I'm a freak, but am I normal? No, I'm not normal. I take this very, very seriously. I am very, very dedicated to what I am doing. And there are some people that are open-minded enough to appreciate that are not intimidated by the march of social conformity enough to just say, "Oh, you're not allowed," So there you go. People are saying there's an issue with the mic, so I might try to fix it again. Right? Because people are having mic issues. Is the mic any better now? Is the mic any better now? Anything better on the microphone? Is it better? Is it better? Is the microphone better? Does it sound? Is the microphone better? Is it better? Is it better? But anyway, I just want to tell you all how much I appreciate you. I really, really do. Thank you for letting me be me. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for not being intimidated by the smears and the harassment and the cancel culture. It's not better. Mike is not better. Well, this is what you got, folks. This is what we're dealing with. I'm curious how it's shitty. I'm curious how it's shitty, right? This is interesting. So maybe since this is such a wild stream, maybe what I'll do, I'll mute and I'll listen to myself on the phone and see how it sounds, right? Um, right? Because this is weird. No, it's coming through okay, people said. It's coming through okay. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Some people are saying it sounds good. All right. Okay. All right. I'll just have to accept that. All right. Okay. So now we're going to finish the super chats. All these blue checks crying about Navalny while Leonard Peltier and Mumia are being denied medical care. Absolutely. Right. Mumia Abu Jamal is being held in horrendous conditions. Leonard Peltier is being held in horrendous conditions. Right. Gonzalo Lira died in a Ukrainian prison. I get updates from the Mumia Abu Jamal campaign. They are angry about how he's being treated. They say that he's not treated, on death row, or not. He's not on death row, but in prison. Leonard Peltier's supporters are also concerned. Um, you know, yeah, where's the outrage for them? Oh, it's the American government who's doing it. It's not the Russians that we're being. I hate this kind of hypocrisy. I really hate it. All right. I'm surprised you didn't bring up the Tucker Putin interview everyone's talking about. Well, I did. I called the Tucker Putin interview a great step forward for anti-imperialism. I watched it. I would encourage you to watch it. A lot of great Russian history in there. I thought it was tremendous, right? I thought it was a great breakthrough. And the fact that Tucker Carlson is there and doing what he's doing is tremendous. I thought it was great. And the stuff about the Soviet subway system was great. People are being nitpicky about these things. Like Tucker Carlson, who has a huge audience in America, sat down with the Russian president 2 hours and let him talk and let him tell the truth. I'm happy. I really, all these people who sit there and go, well, it should have, could have. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, that was a victory. Take a win. Take a win for our side. The Putin Tucker interview was a win, right? Is there hypothetically a way it could have been better? Sure. Is there, are there other people that Putin's been interviewed by? Sure. Take a win. Take a win. Take a win. Take a win. One thing I don't like about ourselves, we just can't take a win, right? We always want to be, we want to be epic losers. We want to be like, no, we lost, but we were right. But no, take a win. Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin, and Putin told the truth in that interview. Take a win. Take a win. All right. That's my advice to people. All right. Today, Kosovo celebrates its Independence Day. 16 years after. Yeah, Kosovo is not a country. Kosovo is part of Serbia, and Serbia is part of Yugoslavia. And, the KFA, the Kosovo, or no, the Kosovo, KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army, was funded by the CIA. A lot of Muslims I know, they, that they don't agree with that. But having studied the situation, I recommend you read this great book, "To Kill a Nation" by Michael Parenti. Right, very good book. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the crisis in Yugoslavia, how it happened. Yeah. The bombing of Yugoslavia, destruction of Yugoslavia, not good. And Kosovo is basically a colony of the United Nations. It's unacceptable. They've admitted now that Milosevic was not committing genocide. Were there war crimes in the war, in the Civil War? Sure. But genocide, were they trying to exterminate the ethnic Albanians? No. That wasn't happening. There were so many lies that have been debunked in mainstream media. It's frustrating. All righty. Do you think Harry Haywood's position on the national question for a black nation in the U.S. South is still relevant today? Well, that wasn't just Harry Haywood's position, Terry. That was the position of the entire communist nation. And my line on that is a nuanced one. Okay? It's a nuanced position because I'm not going to completely denounce it. I would not denounce it because black nationalism is a very revolutionary current. The Nation of Islam, the Republic of New Africa, the Black Panthers. There are many great black nationalists in the United States. Many people in the black community who consider themselves to be a nation, who want a separate territory in what is now considered the United States, who want an autonomous government for the Black Belt region. So I would not ever get up and say that's wrong. I would not ever get up and oppose that. However, and it's important to note, first of all, that region, the Black Belt, it's not called Black Belt because of black people. It's called Black Belt because the soil is black, and the soil has a very, very rich. It's a very fertile soil, and that's where all the most slave plantations were concentrated in what's called the Black Belt because the soil was so rich. It was a great place to grow crops, and still today, it is majority black. It is the highest concentration of black Americans in that region. The descendants of slaves are highly concentrated in the rural areas of the Black Belt South, right? Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, that area that they call the Black Belt is a high concentration of the Black Belt. And the people there are economically robbed because they produce a huge amount of wealth with those crops and they don't see the wealth. You go to the Black Belt, and if you visit the Black Belt, you will see people living in poverty. You will see very extreme poverty if you visit the rural South, the Black Belt region. Okay, so with that said, right, right now the majority position among Black people, as far as I can tell, is they don't want a separate country. Right? Even though I support and admire Black nationalists, the majority of Black people are not nationalists at this point. Most Black people just want a better life in America. They consider themselves to be part of the United States, but they want maybe reparations, they want better conditions. So as a white man, for me to go around and say to black people, I want you to have a separate country, and here's a map of where this separate country can be, I can't be doing that, right? I can't be doing that because that sounds like segregation. That sounds like racism. And if the majority of black people don't want that, and that's the other thing, Harry Haywood, the Communist International, never said that that would be forced on the black community. They said if the black community wanted it, they wanted there to be a vote among black people on the question of self-determination for the black belt. So if black people wanted to stay part of the United States and didn't want a separate republic, that was always something the Communist Party was for. So if I, as a white male, started going around saying to black people, I want you to have a separate country, that sounds like segregation. And the position was never that they should, it was that they should have the right to do it. Right? And that's important, that they should have the right to their own territory. So I maintain my position on this is that if black people wanted to have their own territory in the South, I would support that. Right? If the black community as a group started saying, you know what, we want to have a separate country in the black belt, I would support their right to establish that. But right now, that is not the majority sentiment in the black community. I'm not going to condemn it because black nationalists are some of the most revolutionary black people that are out there, right? So I would not condemn it. I'm not going to say to black people, well, the majority don't want. No, I'm not going to do that. But I cannot advocate the independence of black belts at this time and not be a racist, right? If I were going around advocating the separation of black belt, that sounds like segregation. It's not for me to do. If the black community got into a mode where they said, we want a separate territory, we want the black belt, at that point, I would become a huge supporter of the black belt. But until there is a very clear majority feeling among black people for that, I'm for it. But I also will never condemn any black person. Any black person who burns an American flag, that's your right. Marcus Garvey burned an American flag. Malcolm X said, we're not Americans, and you have the right to feel that way. You have the right to feel that way, right? And any black person who wants a separate black republic, the Republic of New Africa, you know, you have the right to say that, and I'm not going to argue against it. But I don't think it would be appropriate for me as a white man to go around advocating the black belt separatism at this time. That is my position on the black belt thesis. And it's an important thing to understand, right? Because it infuriates me. There's a lot of distortion around this. First of all, you get people that try to talk about that and they say it's horseshoe theory. Oh, well, David Duke, he has this map of the different races in America. Did you know the communist Stalinists did the same thing? They're the same as the Nazis. It's a red-brown alliance. It's horseshoe. Shut the fuck up. It is not. The Communist Party was the greatest champion of black people and their rights. And the black belt thesis was based on understanding that that was one way black people could get land, and it was an option the black community should have. That's what it was. And now that we don't have Jim Crow segregation, now things are a little bit different. But it made sense at the time, right? But it's not the same thing as David Duke and his racial separatist map. So that's the first thing you get. The second thing you get from it, right, is you get people that 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 it's like the opposite. They don't call it white supremacism. They don't try to equate you with racial separatists and Nazis. They they fetishize breaking up America, right? It's their way of feeling so woke. America's a racist, evil society. I am for, and it's not just the black belt, right? If the people of the Southwest wanted to break away, right, and form the Sun Belt or Etzlan, again, I would support that. The majority of Chicano Americans don't want that, though, right? If the Native American tribes wanted to break away from the United States, North Dakota, and have a separate territory, I would support that. But none of these groups, in their majority, are advocating that at this time. But you get people that fetishize that. They're like, yes, we hate America, and we're going to break America up because we hate it so. No, right? That's called national nihilism, and that's a fetish. That's burn it down, tear it down, and I don't like that. Okay, right? If an oppressed nationality in the United States vehemently wanted its own separate territory, they would have the right to. But I don't go around promoting that because we should be the saviors of this country. Capitalism is destroying America. Capitalism is breaking apart America. We want to save America. I'm not a socialist because I want to destroy America. I'm a socialist because I want to save America. Okay? So, again, right? I support any oppressed group and the right to have their own territory, but I don't force it on them. I've made my point. Okay. It's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. Very good. Okay. Thoughts on Lyndon LaRouche and organization? There's two now, right? They split, right? There's LaRouche PAC, which then changed its name. Now they're called the Promethean something. And then there's the LaRouche organization, which is tied with the Schiller Institute. I have never been a member of any LaRouchian organization. Let me repeat that. I have never been a LaRouchian, right? I admire Lyndon LaRouche. I quote Lyndon LaRouche in this book, right? But there are some big disagreements that I have with Lyndon LaRouche in this world. Lyndon LaRouche was a Trotskyite communist and a very smart economist, right? He understood economics. He was kind of a nerdy guy in the Socialist Workers Party who really understood economics. He got politically active in the 1950s. He fought in the Second World War. After the Second World War, he was very against McCarthyism, but he didn't want to join the Communist Party, so he joined the Socialist Workers Party, the Trotskyite group, and he knew a lot about economics. And when the new left, the hippie stuff started, he was really against it. And he taught classes at what was called the Free University in New York City, which was like this study center where people gave classes. He taught classes on Marxism, and he started a group called the National Caucus of Labor Committees. And after a while, the National Caucus of Labor Committees, they became their own political party, and they became the American Labor Party, and eventually they dropped Marxism, and they embraced what they call American School of Economics, the teachings of Henry Charles Carey, and the teachings of the German Roman Catholic economist Friedrich List. The reason that I think Lyndon LaRouche is valuable is because Lyndon LaRouche saw that what they called the new left was a creation of the ultra rich, and he talked way ahead of his time about the Congress for Cultural Freedom, about George McBundy, about what do you call it? The Ford Foundation and the Institute for Policy Studies. They did a very good job showing that the hippie movement, the counterculture, the drug culture, and environmentalism, like, degrowth stuff. All of that was very much a creation of the ultra rich to control the lower levels of capital. And he did a very good job showing that. And because that put him at odds with the majority of the left. Um, you know, so I respect him for doing that. And I think he was very much ahead of his time in discovering that. And I respect him. And the organization that he's involved with plays a very good role. They are very pro Russia. They are very pro China. And I marched with them against World War III. I protested with them against the oppression of Pakistan. So I respect the work that they do. And I mean I consider Daniel Burke to be a friend of mine. I don't know what to say, but I'm not one of them. They're not Marxists. CPI has never been a leadership organization. And I will say that everything they say has a grain of truth in it. Everything they say has a grain of truth in it, but often they present it in a way that sounds crazy. They say, they'll say things like the Queen of England invented Beatles music to brainwash. That sounds crazy, but it is true that Beatles music is very much the result of a lot of research that was done into how music can affect people psychologically, how music can have an effect. If you read The Mind Possessed by William Sargent, he went to Pentecostal prayer services and he went to African tribes and he learned and there was research into the hypnotic effect of music and that British intelligence and this thing called the what do you call it, Tavistock Institute, that was originally part of psychological research. They did develop, and they did, marketing research, and what the rock music that we call the British invasion is the result of a lot of research into how to maximize the emotional impact of music. That's fascinating. There's a really interesting story there. But is it that the Queen of England sat there and said, "I want to brainwash the Americans"? So no, it's much more complicated than that. But it's an interesting story. And so I give them credit for making that story known. But when they present it as the Queen of England, and they sound crazy, right? And that there's many other things that they say that are there's a grain of truth in it, but they present it in kind of a way that makes it off-putting to people, right? And that's what I'll say about them, and that they have broken with Marxism, and they do, unfortunately, a lot of their people. I mean, I'm not speaking for the whole group because I don't know the whole group, and I've gotten different vibes from many different people in the group, but a lot of them just have this bug up their ass that communists are bad. Communists are bad. Communism is evil. Communism is no good. And a lot of their ideas are rooted in Marxism, and their members don't know that, especially their younger members, right? If you haven't studied Marxism, right, you wouldn't know that. But LaRouche, I mean, Marxism was the basis. He started out as a Marxist, then he became LaRouche, and Marxism kind of laid the basis for a lot of his ideas. And a lot of their members that are like my age or younger or slightly older than me, they don't know that. And if you try to tell them that, they won't listen to you. And I never considered joining the LaRouche movement. I was happy to work with them around war stuff. I admire the work that they do, and I admire some of the writing and the work that they've done over the years. And that's my position on them. But they're not. I don't consider them to be my enemy. I don't know why. There's been some unfortunate. You disagree with people. You argue with them sometimes. You disagree with them sometimes. But I think that they play a good role. I think they play a good role, and I'd be happy to cooperate with them again around things we agree on. At this time, we are not cooperating, but I'd be happy to see that change because I think they play a good role. They defend China and the Belt and Road Initiative. They do a lot of good work. I would say the majority of what they publish in regards to current events is right in line with how I see things. Uh, their worldview. I mean, they're much closer to understanding how the world works than any socialist or leftist group is at this point. So I respect, let me put it that way. At this time, they don't want to cooperate with CPI anymore, and that's unfortunate because I feel like I got a lot of flack for working with, the people who don't like me endlessly say Caleb's a LaRoucheite. I'm not. I never have been, but I respect them. But for associating with them, I've gotten an endless amount of, oh my God, you're a LaRoucheist, and I never succumbed to the pressure. I never denounced them. So it kind of breaks my heart to see them just, run away from me the way they did. But who knows? And you have to understand that group has been subjected to a huge amount of persecution by the American government. Okay. Lyndon LaRouche was thrown in federal prison. A number of their leaders were thrown in prison. The US government really tried to crush them. So any group that's faced that level of persecution is going to get a little paranoid. They're going to get a little wacky. So I can forgive them, even though, it kind of breaks my heart to see them, kind of turn on me the way they did. Right. I mean, whatever. I don't know. A lot of things are crazy. The world of politics that we are in here in the United States is crazy. Okay. It's crazy. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's just, America itself is going crazy. We have mass shootings all the time. People are doing crazy shit. So the country itself is crazy. And among people that disagree with, um, with the status quo, uh, you know, there's a lot of confusion, right? And there's a lot of, stuff floating around. And so, I want to be patient with people and I want to be forgiving with people. And, I mean, look, and, the other thing is, people fight, you know. There are times where you have to get tough and you have to tell people, this must stop. And, you know, um, you have to, you have to deal with them. So, I don't know. My attitude is CPI will work with anybody who is pro Russia, pro China, opposing US wars. Anyone who's got the Jimmy Dore political perspective, the gray zone political perspective, we want to work with. Okay. With that said, and I'm just talking out my ass here, just giving you my thoughts here. I'm just telling you, I am so tired of it. I'm really fucking tired of it, right? We need to stop World War III. We need to build a movement of Americans who want to be anti-imperialist. And I am so tired of the competitiveness, right? So many of the people that have our type of politics, that have the Jimmy Dore line, the gray zone line, understand that Russia and China are right and US imperialism are wrong and support Julian Assange. So many people in that category, they don't think we can win. They don't think we can win. And it's just a social media contest, right? I want people to watch me on social media. I want to be the superstar on social media. And I want all these other people to be less than me. And I am so fucking tired of that. I'm really fucking tired of it. And I really it gets to me because whether you realize it or not, to normal people, we're all the same. Right? We're all the same to normal people, and we should all have each other's backs. We should all have each other's backs. Stop with the egos and the high school nonsense. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really, really get tired of the competitiveness, of the childishness, I really get tired. I really, really get tired of it. Right? Everyone's so worried about who they're standing next to. Oh, I can't stand next to this person. There, blah 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 blah. I can't stand, and it's like all of us have been, all of us have been all of us get called Nazis. All of us get called rapists. All of us get called every dirty name. Okay? All of us. No matter who you are, if you do this kind of politics, immediately Twitter starts up that you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a sex criminal, you're a, dirty, rotten human cannibal, you know. And if we can't just be like, you know what? I'm going to work with people. people are building an organization, anti-imperialist, and I'm going to work with them. If we can't learn to do that, we're not going to succeed. And I'm at the point where I can't deal with this shit anymore. I really can't. I was talking to Peter Coffin just today about this on the phone. We just have to build our own shit. CPI just has to build CPI because these other people, every time we try to work with these other people, it always becomes, I'm better than you. I want to be in the spotlight. No, I want to be in the spotlight. No, you have to go through us if you want to get on the stage. We're better. It always turns into that bullshit. I'm tired of it. I'm really fucking tired. And every time I start working with different people in this sphere, it starts to get better. And then immediately, oh no, I can't be seen with this person. This person's cringe. Oh my, shut up. I can't deal with it. I really can't deal with it. You can't build a movement if people have that attitude. And CPI, we give a platform to anybody, right? I mean, when we were working friendly with LaRouche, we gave a platform to LaRouche. When we were, we've given a platform to various streamers who are no longer friendly to us, we don't care, right? And we want people who have this point of view to get boosted, right? Because that advances anti-imperialism. But there's so many of these people that have kind of vaguely anti-imperialist politics that are in a competition. And the other thing is, and I'll just say this, we're building a real organization. We have real events. We have weekly Zoom calls. We're doing real outreach. We're not building an internet family. We're building a real organization, a real community that people can be part of, people can make friends in. It's a real network of people who can work together and promote anti-imperialism. And there are some people that just, first of all, they don't understand why anyone would do that, right? For them, this is just a social media entertainment thing, right? This is just about, being on the internet and getting more share. They don't understand why anyone would build a real community of solidarity. They don't get it, number one. And number two, they're threatened as hell by it. Oh my God, they can't, they are really mad at us for doing that. And I pity those people. I really, really pity those people. I really do. Because, I am not going to stop organizing. I am not going to stop building a community of people centered around imperialism until I die. I am not going to surrender. Are there setbacks? Sure. Are there mistakes? Yeah. But, I don't care if CPI becomes 2 people. I'll still keep being built CPI. Maybe we'll have a new name at that. Right now, CPI has 147 members. Right? Great. That's great. But I don't care if CPI becomes 2 people. I don't care if it's just me and my wife in CPI. I'm going to keep building CPI, right? I am not going to give up. I'm not going to walk away. I'm not going to surrender. We're going to build an anti-imperialist organization in this country. We're going to try to do the best job we can. We're going to try to not make mistakes. We're going to get better at it. I'm not giving up. I am not going to surrender. And Marx very famously said, philosophers have previously only analyzed the world. The point, however, is to change it. And if this is just about writing and feeling smart, this is just about getting social media attention for yourself, do it about something else. Do it about, baseball or football or country music or something, right? If you're writing and speaking about politics, the point should be to actually change the world. And to actually change the world, you need to build an organization of people, right? And people, a lot of the people that put out, that put out the message that we put out don't understand that. For them, it is just this kind of internet vanity project. I want to be an influencer. I want to be known as a good journalist. No, it's about building a movement. It's about building a movement, building a community of people that can build anti-imperialism. And strategic equilibrium is coming. Communities are going to be very important as the crisis intensifies. Right? I feel a little bit like Noah's Ark, right? The story goes that old Noah got a message from God. They said to Noah, there's going to be a big giant flood. Noah started building an ark, and everyone thought Noah was crazy. And Noah said, no, we're going to start building an ark. And they said, why are you building an ark? That's crazy. And the flood came. Noah's family had an ark to go to. Now, CPI is going to be an ark, my friends. The flood is coming. The flood is coming. All right. And if you don't realize the flood is coming, you are deluding yourself. And CPI is an ark. It's an arc for anti-imperialists, okay? It is an arc. It is a place we can network with each other and depend on each other and stand together. I am the only anti-imperialist who's building an arc. You can think I'm crazy for doing it, and you can think I'm such a loser. Oh my God, why is he not streaming about working out and pickup lines for women? And why is he bullying trans people? Because I'm building an arc. I'm building an arc. And you can laugh at me all day for building an arc. But when the floodwaters come, I think you're going to want a place on my arc. And we'll talk. We'll talk when the floodwaters come. And when you want to come on my arc, we'll talk. We'll talk. And it's not just my arc, it's a lot of people's arc. But, I mean, that's kind of the situation. I'm building an arc. I see the floodwaters coming. I see what's ahead for U.S. society. I see the life expectancy being the lowest it's been in 25 years. I see instability in the United States. I'm building an arc. If you don't want to build the arc with me, no one's making you. But I would appreciate it if people didn't try to marginalize me for building an arc. So there you go. I complain too much and I'm going to stop doing it. Right. So, but, I'm building an arc. There you go. Next question. All right. If everyone's a Nazi, then the real ones can hide in plain sight. I agree. Right. I mean, they have made the term Nazi obsolete. If everyone's a Nazi, no one's a Nazi. A Nazi is a very serious thing. If you are an admirer of Adolf Hitler, you have mental illness. You have a deep psychological problem, right? And neo Nazis tend to go out and murder people and commit mass shootings and hate crimes and such. Nazis, actual like people who think Hitler was a good dude, are fucked. And there's very few of them in this world. There's two of them that I know of. One of them is called Vladimir Zelensky, and the other is called, Alexei Navalny. But there's the Azov Battalion. I mean, there are weirdos who put on stupid costumes. There was George Lincoln Rockwell, but actual Nazis are pretty reprehensible people. Right? In this day and age, you're the person who thinks, that Hitler wasn't a bad guy at all. He was a good old guy. You got a problem. Right? You've got a problem if you think, Mr. Auschwitz was a good dude. You've got a big problem. But everyone who disagrees with the liberal order on anything is not that, right? Are there people that that are racist? Yeah, a lot of racist people out there. Not all of them are Nazis. Very few of them are Nazis. I'd say the overwhelming majority of people that are racist don't even think they're racist, right? And even among people who think they're racist, they're not the majority of them are Nazis. There are very few Nazis in this world. There are some, right? And I think that our country, unfortunately, because of the Cold War, has actually cultivated quite a bit of them, right? Because in World War II, Nazis fought the communists. After the Second World War, there was a lot of bringing far right, people who collaborated with the Nazis into the United States, Nazi sympathizing Eastern Europeans, Nazi, people like that, had a presence in the country. And there's always a tolerance for it. And one thing that always annoyed me, right? And it's not like this, it just depends where you go in the United States. But when I was in school, the way they talked about communism and the way they talked about Nazism were night and day. Communism never worked anywhere. Communism, you have to be an idiot to believe in communism. Oh, communists want everyone to get paid the same wage. That would never work. That's retarded. Communism, oh, it's stupid, and they don't believe in God. That's evil. Communism, forget it. But Hitler, oh, he was such a good speaker. And Germany was having a bad economy, and he fixed it up. And of course, Hitler was bad, but Nazism is always this understandable mistake that the Germans made. But communism, you have to be an idiot to believe in communism. That always annoyed me, right? It always annoyed me, right? People bend over backwards to give Nazism a pass. Well, they didn't know the Holocaust was. And Nazism just gets this pass. And communism is, oh my God, you must be pure evil. I mean, they don't even teach you what communists even believe. Um, you know, so there you go. You can transfer that negative energy to Peter Coffin. Ha ha ha. He provides the best understanding of the silly ideological competitiveness of the left, the woke, and the anti-woke. Yeah, yeah. Peter is awesome. Go watch his documentaries. He's got a new film coming out pretty soon. It's gonna be awesome. I love Peter. Peter is a great guy. All righty. All right. Monopoly has a free jail card. Now we have a Nazi card. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Right. The cancel culture, just doesn't apply. I mean, it's just everyone's a Nazi except for actual Nazis in Ukraine or Alexei Navalny. Are food prices going higher this year? Yes, because the Biden administration is actively trying to decrease the amount of food in the world. We'll talk about that on a future stream. It's insane. It's utterly insane. Why on earth would anyone do such a thing at this time? But yes, the Biden administration, they're trying to reduce the amount of arable land that's being used. That's what the farmer protests in Europe are all about. I mean, it's the policy of BlackRock is to reduce the global food supply. It's utter insanity. But got to save the world from global warming. It's Greta Thunberg. It's nuts. And yes, when the amount of food goes down, the price of food goes up. That's supply and demand, and it's nuts. It's utter insanity, and they're squeezing working families. Drop the charges against Julian Assange rally 4 p.m. Tuesday in front of the Chicago Tribune. Very good. Very good. Free Julian Assange, right? Anyone who talks about Navalny saying, "Oh, and you support Assange too." Oh, you don't, right? Because I mean, it's outrageous, utterly outrageous to have people talk like they are so concerned about Julian Assange. So, books on Venezuela. Books on Venezuela. Hold on. Okay. All righty. Okay. So I just went over to my Latin America shelf, right? This was Gabby's super chat. Books on Venezuela. I actually really enjoyed this book. Um, we created Chavez, A People's History of the Venezuelan Revolution. It's very good. George Chigarello Mar, who's a professor in Philadelphia. I actually went to an event at the Venezuelan embassy, the Venezuelan mission in New York City. He gave a great talk on this book. It's really, really good. Um, and it's about the Bolivarian community organizations, etc. This would be my top book I would recommend on Venezuelan socialism. Um, I would recommend this book. This would be a great place to start, I think. Um, because this has got economic data in it. It's got facts. This is a great book to start. But there's also, there's a lot you can read about it. So this is a good book that the Venezuelan government published. It's called The Fascist Coup Against Venezuela. And it just documents the attempted overthrow of the Venezuelan government in 2002 to 2003. There's also a book called The Chavez Code, which also describes, it goes into great detail about the CIA coup, the attempted, overthrow of Venezuela. It's called the Chavez Code: Cracking U.S. Intervention in Venezuela. Now, also, and this is very interesting, if you want to understand the ideology of 20th, 21st century socialism, right? There's a Chilean Marxist journalist, who is actually, she is one of the main ideologues, like thinkers of Bolivarian socialism. Her name is Marta Harnacker, right? And she wrote a number of books about 21st century socialism that are very good. And she lived in Cuba for a long time. This one's a hardline communist, right? But she's like, she's like she's like China she's in the main line of global communism. She's not a Trotskyite. She's not, trying to go back to the Stalin years. Marta Harnecker, who wrote a number of, Marxist books, some of which are available in English. You know, 21st Century Socialism, correcting. I mean, she has a book kind of assessing the errors of the 20th century. This woman, Marta Harnecker, is a real big influence. Like the ideology of Bolivarian socialism and Venezuela. Read Marta Harnecker because she had a really, really big influence on socialism. And Gabriel Rockel. So I'm going to have to Google that name. Gabriel Rockel, American philosopher and writer. Not familiar with him. French, born in 1972. He's a younger guy. Okay. All right. The American philosophers are like 70 years old. Derrida. Derrida is a postmodernist, but he's also into Alain Badiou. Alain Badiou did the idea of communism. Yeah, I'm not familiar with his work. He looks like a postmodernist to me, but the CIA and the Frankfurt School is anti-communism. Well, good move like that. Maybe it's good move against that, right? Because the synthetic left thinks that's communism, and the right wing thinks it's communism also, and the Frankfurt School and all that is not communism. So I'm glad he exposed that. He looks like somebody I ought to look into. The CIA reads French theory. Oh wow, looks like he's documented what I've talked about. But Sophie from Mars said it's all just a conspiracy theory. But no, it's true. The CIA funding of the synthetic left. He's anti-synthetic left. Good. Well, maybe I can interview him sometime. Sounds like an interesting guy. Sounds like an interesting fellow. Interesting fellow. Interesting guy. All right, folks. All right. Okay, folks. It's been a wild ride. Thanks for being here through all of this. I'll be back soon. The like button, hit the subscribe button, notifications bell. I've had a wild day. But I'll be back. And, we don't surrender. We don't surrender. Upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.